All right, so today we clearly had a lot going on, specifically once we got towards the end of the day. Now, going into the day, we had a lot of that momentum trying to keep us up, keep us pushing back to 12.7 and getting some of that continuation. Now, we've been dealing with PPI and CPI, and might I say, PPI data today was egregious. It was awful. It was some of the worst data that we've seen. Absolute monster beats towards the upside, which we all know is not good for the economy. So what have I been saying the past few days? There's a disconnect between fundamentals and technicals. Fundamentally, we look the worst that we've looked arguably since October. From a technical viewpoint, you look extremely strong. So when we look at the charts and we start to get a better visual here, we go to something like the daily, we can continue to see, we talked about the bull flag you were trying to hold up, get some of that confirmation, trying to get that break up, right? Today, you had a little bit of continuation, but we saw once Bullard came out and we saw some of the Fed members talk, that's where we saw some of the weakness creep into the market. Now, the question is have we confirmed to break out of this downward trend, which I would say we are upward trend? I would say yes, we are out of this trend as of right now, and you don't look too hot. Now, arguably invalidating the bull flag as well. We're not going to say that quite yet. You are almost to that point, but let's just talk a little bit about these technicals before we, start jumping to conclusions. Now, before I go any further, I have to ask you to do two things. Can you like and can you subscribe? Every single day we make videos for you. Now, the subscribing part, I recommend that you watch the video and see if you get anything out of it. And if you do, come back for more, because every day it's unbiased opinions based on the market and what we're looking at on the chart. So we use fundamentals and technicals, and I give you at the end of the video typically the stocks that I'm loving, stocks that I'm liking, and hopefully some trade setups. Now, we have the Discord link down below if you are interested in that, but we provide more than enough free information if you don't want to take that next step just yet and you're just too new to the channel. What I do recommend is getting on the newsletter. It's 100% free. We've had this going for a while, and it was only for either members of Discord or ex-members of Discord, but now we're opening it up to everyone. Like I said, the main focus of this year is to create as much free content and get everyone up to date with news and technicals as much as possible. So you're going to get overall view of the technicals, futures, stocks we're loving, going on through the week, hot topics going on there, and then all the key levels. You can see how these were respected going into this week. Also, you get the data pool, the calendar for the week, so you know everything, the earnings and everything in between, so you are prepared. So make sure you check that out. The link is down below. Now, when we jump back into the NQ, I want to just go into some of this daily action. Now, before everyone jumps to conclusions and say, well, Tyler, we have to be bearish now. There's been a few things, in my opinion, that point towards downside or give you the bearish thesis. Now, when we look at technicals, we have to say, what do we need to do? We need to make a lower low in order to be bearish. Okay, so looking here, you could argue getting below 12.2, but for confirmation on my end, I want to see us get below swing lows around 11.88. You start to break below that, I believe the trend has just almost entirely flipped, and you're probably in a world of pain. Now, we can also identify right now that you're still trying to kind of hold the trend. You're trying to break back into it today, but you did fall back down. Now, you can also see here, you can see you're breaking below that trend also here, kind of on the hourly, how you were holding some of these higher lows, and you flip below. So end of the day, we're seeing some continuation into some of this weakness, something that we haven't been seeing from sellers. So this, if you're a bear, is a good sign. Now, when we look at what's happening here, we're still clearly in our range. Highs of around 12.8 down to lows of around 12.2, right? Clear demand, clear supply up here at this level. We mentioned it yesterday. It's from the 30-minute time frame, but overall, it's still held up. Okay, now when we go a little bit deeper into something like ES and giving you what's happening with SPY, things are a little bit clear and easy to see here. 4,100 has been the writing on the wall. It's been probably your biggest key level. 41 through 4,200, I don't find it a coincidence that you're having such a hard time in this range. Now, when we come back down, this is going to be your demand right here, around 40.85 down to lows of 40.45. So this has been a very strong demand also. Just range trading from basically 40.50 up to highs of around 40.70, back and forth, back and forth. And again, what do we want to highlight here? You need to understand when you're looking at this market, The area that's going to give you the biggest problems are the hardest area to trade. Now, me personally, the only position I have right now is still a Google position, a deep in the money play, but the risk there is pretty small for myself, and that's why I play deep in the money. But if you look here and you're trying to over trade this and day trade this, when you trade these areas of consolidation, they're going to give you the most problems, right? Because there's no clear trend, there's no clear breakout, there's no clear follow through, right? And we've seen this happening right now. But needless to say, happening today, again, I've said it on Twitter, I've said it more than once, I am the most fundamentally bearish that I've been in a while, okay? And I've said this time and time again over the past week. But the issue is we're not getting it aligned with technicals, because what do we do here? We align technicals and fundamentals. I don't operate on swings without both of them, okay? Now, when we look at what's happening, if the Fed continues this tone, I do believe we could see some harsh downside. Today was pretty interesting. We had minimal volume all day long. Coming into after hours right now, we're trying to get back above your 30-day average. So it just actually operated and went back down to 71. It's going to be around 75-ish on the day for your volume here on SPY. That isn't that bad in my opinion, because the volume up until Bullard spoke was extremely, extremely low. You got a bulk of your volume from sellers. And this is, again, I'm trying to, for some people think that I just am permeable, but again, I only talk about what's given to us. So again, we did see some very interesting spikes of volume. Trying to give you a visual here, I'm going to go to the SPY to give you the best representation when we look at volume, okay? So just stay with me for 1 second. So we're going to go really quick to about the 1 minute so you can see in real time how quickly this volume really did step in. And you can see all throughout the day, this is where you're going to get some of your answers too. So you can see all throughout the day, very low all day long. And then around 2 o'clock, power hour, right? Big sharp increase, and then continuation all to the downside, right? It's hard to see right there. It is pretty hard to see just because, I can't zoom into the chart, especially down to the bottom, but you can see right there it is stepping up. And so that's where we saw a bulk of that volume come in. Now, the question for downside though is, can you get continuation with this going into tomorrow? Now, we've seen the writings on the wall when we look at something like ES and we look at the charts here, okay? You need to start seeing some continuation for that downside pressure. For me to become bearish, I have to see continuation, okay? And I know people keep getting upset. They're like, Tyler, look, you just got to be bearish, right? I'm not going to force my way into position or force a break of the trend. And I'm telling you right now, you look like you are on the verge of breaking these higher lows on ES and shooting back down. So again, it's lining up for some more downside. You need to understand that, but you don't want to jump the gun, okay? You want to make sure volume is behind you. Now, going over some of this flow, I want to go over Bookmap, and then I also want to cover what's happening here on the flow. If we look at the flow coming into the market really quick, showing you the biggest orders of the day, going to premium, and then we'll go through Qs and SPY. Obviously, what we're seeing here, you had a lot of big orders beginning of the day on SPX, and near the end of the day going into power hour, you had a few bigger orders on SPX as well, but I believe they're taking a little bit of a gamble there. Now, going in specifically to SPY, you still can see your biggest orders are still towards the downside. Very clear, very easy to see. Qs, we talked about how you were seeing a lot more bullish flow here. Today, I think it was a weaker day on the flow. Obviously, yes, still the most strength here. But I'm telling you, if you're looking at this from an investor standpoint, you're looking at the market as viewing Qs have had the biggest run. SPY has shown the most weakness. So it makes sense if you're going long, you're using the Qs as a hedge. And that's most likely what we're seeing from some of these positions as we continue to see the SPY puts ramp in. And we are seeing those gradually come back into the market. Going into VIX, you're still seeing some calls come in here, nothing incredible. TLT definitely was a lot more bullish yesterday. So when we jump back in here, again, I want to give you the best visual. Going into Bookmap, really showing you the level 2 data and as it's coming in. This is basically just showing you level 2 buyers and sellers on the book and where they're at. This is Bookmap. The link is down below if you guys want to check them out. And again, this sometimes just gives you a better glimpse into what's happening in the underlying part of futures specifically. So we can see all day long, we kind of saw the same story of what we saw yesterday. We see that downside out of the gate, and then we immediately start pushing back towards this upside, knocking out sellers all along the way. So we can say we knock them out, just continue up and up and up. And you can see buyers holding you up as well. So you see the continuation time and time again. And then what happens near lunch, you get a little bit of a slowdown, not a shock. We push back up to highs. And then near power hour, that's when we see all the buyers just take off the book. You can just see they were trying to hold you up. Once you get back below 41.35, they basically just gave it all up and sellers took over from there. And you can see sellers setting up walls so you can't even try to break back higher as well. So this definitely shows you the weakness that was taking place on the day. Now, when we follow this up, again, the biggest area we're going to want to watch is ES specifically overnight. 4,100. If you stay below 4,100, I think you're showing a lot of signs of weakness. NQ, you want to see you get back below 12.4 at least. Now, we still have a demand around 12.3 all the way down to 12.25. That's going to be a support. But I want to say right now, if we start to get below 12.4, we've seen a lot more weakness step into the market. So 12.4 and ES on 4,100 are your big levels to be watching. That's what I'm viewing specifically there. Now, to wrap the video up, going over some stocks I'm liking, equities I'm liking right now. Today, I loved Meta. I had one trade today. No, I had two. But Meta was the loser on the day. And that's what I want to focus on right now. So Meta, when I was looking at this on the day and in Discord, this was the trade that we had. So we had the downside push that was happening here. And you can see you were making lower highs down. You ended up breaking out, got rejected at 71.56, and then pushed back down, right? The trade went about 10%, but I wanted more. I was really playing to break back up. And then Bullard kind of shook everyone up with what he said, and he broke down. If Meta comes out tomorrow and can break lows around 71.6, I think you're going to start working your way back towards the downside. Again, this has been probably one of the more bearish stocks out there, and you're seeing a lot of retail go heavy on shorts here. So if retail is going heavy on shorts, in my opinion, I love to trade those back towards the upside. However, if indexes continue to falter and continue to drop down, I do think you're going to see some continued weakness here. But you're also seeing where you're kind of finding support right now, right at previous highs that we'd established at 71.1, 71.6 roughly. And from this level, when we're looking at it, I think you're pretty illiquid till you come back into 161, at least 162. So I definitely think there's at least $10 of downside in the books for Meta potentially if the markets continue to get hit. So definitely watch Meta. Now, onto the next thing that we're going to be looking at, semiconductors. And this is not to set up a short potential here. I just want to give people a little bit of a warning and go over what's happening here. Now, you could argue that you are setting up a double top at 230, but this would not be a play until you break below 208. If NVIDIA breaks below 208, then I'd be looking for shorts down towards 190, 192 roughly, maybe even 189. But it has to break below 208 for that to happen. Until then, it's not a short play for me because you will get confirmation on that double top if you break below this neckline right here. So that's what you would have to break down. So just be ready for that. Be watching for that. AMD, similar type play. I think there's a little bit more weakness here in AMD because you've only made lower highs and you're already making new local lows. So I think this is a predecessor and giving you a visual of possibly what's happening with NVIDIA. So I'd be looking at NVIDIA for sure if that happens. Apple. Now, Apple is probably one of the more bullish names going into today. You came up, almost tested 157, got to 156.4, got rejected. We talked about this supply you were coming into up here. This is around a 2-hour supply, I believe. You got rejected and pushing back down to the top of that pennant. You're still above it. So we want to see if Apple's going to hold this line and hold up. But Apple, you have all types of support here, and I just wanted to give you a visual and a recap on what was happening here. So make sure you keep checking them out because if you come out strong, I think Apple is definitely one of the stronger names out there in the market. Microsoft did fill one of those gaps finally today, back down to 263.5. We've been talking about this. You do have another gap down around 258.3 right here. So be on the lookout for Microsoft if you can break back down. If you want to scalp it, you'd be looking for a low break of around 260.5. If you get below that, I think we'll get that continuation. But also Microsoft, just look for it to start trending towards that downside. That's what I'd be looking for there. The goal right now, again, you're still at demand on some of these higher time frames. When we look at ES, you're creeping back in. So when you're entering these demands, you got to be careful because ultimately, what do we expect when we enter a support or demand? We expect buyers to step back into the market. So this is like the crossroads that you're at because yes, fundamentally, you continue to get bad news coming out, right? That data is not changing. The data is terrible right now. And the Fed is giving you a tone of what's wrong with the market. But we've seen us continue to bounce even though we're having this bad information. So I just urge a lot of caution. I assumed from CPI and PPI we'd get our breakout, but it's like sellers just don't have enough strength yet. That's why I continue to say today was a good start near the end of the day when Bullard spoke, but you need to see continuation. Continuation is ultimately what drives this and gets us to the best money-making opportunities. I like these downside plays probably the most. Now, going into the last few things, VIX. You're finally seeing something you want to see here. This is good, in my opinion, good behavior. You're finally seeing a pretty volatile upside move here, right? We basically moved from 118.5 all the way up to around 20.4, roughly, right? Really nice. And this happened during market hours, which if anything makes me more excited. For instance, we saw some of that downside the other day, which wasn't during market hours, and then you top out and come right back down. So this excites me. And this gets me to the point of saying, okay, maybe we get some traction here. Maybe VIX can get going. The fact that it did this during market hours. You want to see continuation on VIX, pushing and trying to close back above 22, getting back in that 24 region we all remember and love. TLT. This is, again, another big bullet point. That's why I keep saying fundamentally it's all there. Everyone that's been bearish and been telling me about being bearish, look, fundamentally, I couldn't agree with you any further. You were there, but you have got to see new lows be met on the indexes specifically. We can't just see bonds only go up and TLT get hammered, right? TLT breaking down. You have that bump and run, a break, retest, and pushing back down. TLT, like I said, probably aiming towards 100 very soon. Going into the yields, the 10-year specifically, again, really trying to push back up to 4%. This is dangerous. Going into the 30-year yield, even stronger. Very close, almost 0.07 off on these highs from getting back to 4%. This is what we've been looking for. The bonds are continuing. So again, this makes me believe we're about to start seeing a little bit more strength from sellers. But I cannot predict when we get that volume. Again, I do believe today was a great start. I think today was exactly what we wanted to see. We wanted to see some increase of sellers if you're going to start looking for that downside opportunity. So I do like that we're inching up slowly from the sellers. That's a good note, but we need to see more because if tomorrow we come back up and we break back above 12.5, it really puts me in an area of the only person that could really tank this market is Powell himself, because we're seeing all the Fed really tell you how they feel about the market. Now, what I will say too, from Bullard and Mester, the two Fed that spoke today, they both are non-voting members, first of all, in the Fed, so they get no real say about the 0.25 or 0.5 hike, right? But they were advocating for a 0.5 hike in the last meeting. And they really shined the light on the possibility of a 0.5 coming back. I personally don't believe we'll have a 0.5 hike. That's my opinion. The Fed, Bullard even said today that it's most likely going to 5.25 to 5.5 as a top baseline of rates. That puts us in line of two more 0.25s, which makes sense. Now, jumping a 0.5, then back down to 0.25, that really puts the consumer and puts the citizen back in an area of not trusting the Fed because they're all over the place. They're lowering, they're raising, they're lowering, they're raising. It really puts you in an area to not trust what they're doing. So the Fed wants to maintain one trust, and they also want to stick to a plan, which we assume they're going to, okay? And honestly, I don't think having a random 0.5 hike is going to put a dent in inflation within a month or two, okay? It's going to take time. It's like what they said. You're going to sit at these high rates for a while. And I just don't think they're going to start just raising rates like crazy. But again, what do we want to see tomorrow? We want to see continuation based on volume towards the downside. If you're a bear, okay, that's what you need to see. You're still well above demand on NQ. We go back to ES. You're just creeping back into it, right? You're dangerously close back inside your demand here, okay? You're getting there. You flip 4,100. You're not to the point where you can start hammering those puts yet, but you are getting close. And the sign, again, I want to keep it on repeat so you understand. Volume, volume, volume. I'll see you tomorrow. If you have questions, the link is down below for Discord, for Twitter. Twitter is the best place to ask questions and to post anything that you have that I might be interested in. And I'll probably retweet you if it's any good at all. I'll see you tomorrow.